Picture this. It's October 2025. The WNBA Finals just ended. The Las Vegas Aces have won their third title in 4 years. One of the lasting images of the season was Engelbert getting relentlessly booed by the crowd during the Aces championship trophy presentation. Thousands of fans drowning out the woman who literally saved their league from financial extinction. She's standing there, holding a microphone, and the arena is shaking with boos. Not for a referee, not for a rival player, for the commissioner. The woman who took over a league that was bleeding money and turned it into the biggest growth story in professional sports. And here's the part that nobody saw coming. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't fire back. She just smiled, because Cathy Engelbert already knew what nobody else in that building understood yet. She was already planning her exit. The media deal was done. The CBA was about to get wrapped up. Expansion was locked in. Every single box on her checklist was about to be checked. And the moment that last item got ticked off, she was walking out the door. Not because they pushed her out, because she was finished. And what happened behind the scenes to get to that moment is way more. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a video. More dramatic than anyone realizes. Before the WNBA, Cathy Engelbert was already a legend in the corporate world. She worked for Deloitte for 33 years and was elected as its CEO in 2015, becoming the first woman to lead a Big Four accounting firm. Let that sink in. Deloitte, one of the most powerful consulting firms on the planet. She wasn't some mid-level executive who got a nice promotion. She was running the entire operation. And, under her watch, that firm's revenue grew over 30% to more than $20 billion. So when the NBA came knocking in 2019, it wasn't because they needed a figurehead. They needed a fixer. On the 15th of May, 2019, Engelbert was named the first commissioner of the WNBA. Previous WNBA leaders had been titled President, too, end quote. That title change alone tells you everything. They weren't looking for someone to maintain the status quo. They were looking for someone to rebuild from the ground up. And when Engelbert walked in, what she found was a financial disaster. The league was hemorrhaging cash. Viewership was stagnant. Attendance was declining. Teams were operating at significant losses. Nobody was watching, and the few people who were paying attention weren't exactly optimistic about the future. Most executives in her position would have taken one look at the books and walked right back out. But Engelbert wasn't most executives. She'd spent 3 decades navigating the most complex business environments in the world. She'd led a firm of over 100,000 employees through major transformations. A struggling basketball league wasn't going to scare her off. Engelbert has led the league to rapid commercial growth, historic popularity, and its most significant expansion in history, but has faced criticism over player compensation. And that criticism part? That's the understatement of the century. Because what Engelbert didn't fully realize when she took the job was that fixing the business side was actually the easy part. The hard part was going to be dealing with the people inside the league who would fight her every step of the way while simultaneously benefiting from everything she built. But we'll get to that, because what she accomplished first deserves its own spotlight, and the numbers are genuinely staggering. Let's just lay out the raw facts of what Engelbert delivered during her tenure, because the list reads like fiction. She navigated the league through an entire global pandemic, creating what became known as the Wubble season in 2020 to keep games going when the world was shutting down. She didn't just keep the lights on. She kept the entire league operational when most businesses were closing their doors permanently. The league has signed new media deals beginning in 2026, reportedly worth in excess of $200 million per year. That's a multi-billion-dollar commitment from Disney, Amazon, and NBC Universal. For a league that was barely generating enough revenue to cover operating costs when she arrived, that's not just growth. That's a complete transformation of the business model. Then, there's expansion. She has presided over a significant expansion of the league, adding franchises in San Francisco, Portland, and Toronto, with future expansion franchises planned for Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia. The league went from 12 teams to a projected 18 by 2030. And here's the number that really tells the story. The Dream reportedly paid a $10 million expansion fee in 2008, while the latest 3 expansion teams paid $250 million, from $10 million to $250 million. That's a 25-fold increase in franchise value under one commissioner's watch. Then came the CBA. After a prolonged labor battle, the WNBA and WNBPA reached a verbal agreement on the terms of a new CBA early Wednesday, just 51 days before the league's 30th season is set to tip off. Under the new CBA, the salary cap will start at $7 million, up from $1.5 million in 2025, with the Supermax starting at $1.4 million, up from $249,244 in 2025. The average salary will be around $600,000, up from $120,000 in 2025, with the minimum salary surpassing $300,000. That's a 400% increase in average pay. The 2026 CBA establishes the first comprehensive revenue-sharing model in women's professional sports history. Read that again? The first ever in women's professional sports. On paper, that's a Hall of Fame resume by any standard. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn. Because achievement doesn't equal appreciation, and the people who benefited most from Engelbert's work were about to become her loudest critics. In 2022, Engelbert made a decision that would haunt her for years. The 2022 decision to sell a 16% stake in the league for $75 million has drawn scrutiny, given how dramatically franchise valuations and viewership have climbed since. Now, here's an important detail that a lot of commentators keep getting wrong. It was a 16% stake, not 60, 16. And here's the context everyone conveniently forgets. The WNBA badly needed capital in 2022. Not wanted, needed, unquote. The league was still operating at a loss. Viewership hadn't exploded yet. The Caitlin Clark wave was still 2 years away. Without that cash infusion, the infrastructure improvements that positioned the league for its massive growth period might never have happened. At the time, the deal reportedly valued the WNBA at nearly $1 billion, but some follow-up information put it more at $475 million. So depending on which number you believe, Engelbert either got a fair deal or an undervalued one. But here's what happened after that sale. Franchise valuations went through the roof. Viewership hit all-time highs. Attendance surged. Social media engagement skyrocketed. Expansion fees jumped to $250 million per franchise. That 16% stake that was sold for $75 million, it's now estimated to be worth somewhere between $600 million and $640 million. And reports suggest the league is now exploring buying it back. Critics will say she gave away the future for pennies. But the reality is more complicated than that. Frustration with Engelbert spans several areas, including that some of Engelbert's business decisions, such as the $75 million capital raise, might have complicated the WNBA's ownership structure and hamstrung the league from growing even more. That's a fair criticism. The ownership structure did get more complex. But here's the thing nobody wants to acknowledge. Without that $75 million, the league might not have survived long enough to become worth billions. Engelbert made the hard call that kept the lights on, and now the same people who benefited from that decision are the ones calling it a mistake. It's easy to criticize a life raft when you're already safely on shore, but the person who threw it to you when you were drowning, they remember what the water looked like. And that tension between Engelbert's business acumen and the players' growing frustration was about to boil over in the most explosive way imaginable. September 30th, 2025. That's the date everything changed. Minnesota Lynx star Nafisa Collier blasted WNBA leadership in her exit interview, accusing league commissioner Cathy Engelbert of being negligent in her governance. This wasn't some offhand comment caught on a hot mic. The Minnesota Star read a prepared statement that lasted nearly 5 minutes. Collier came prepared. She had receipts, she had quotes, and she dropped them all on live television. She alleged that Engelbert told her in a private conversation that superstar Caitlin Clark and other young standouts should be on their knees in gratitude for the platform the league has given them. According to Collier, when she asked Engelbert about the officiating crisis in the league, Engelbert's response was, "Well, only the losers complain about the refs." And when Collier pressed about young stars like Clark, Reese, and Buchers making so little relative to the revenue they generate, Engelbert reportedly told Collier that Clark should be grateful she makes $16 million off the court, because without the platform that the WNBA gives her, she wouldn't make anything. Those alleged quotes detonated across social media like a bomb. Players immediately rallied behind Collier. Fans were outraged. The entire narrative shifted overnight from Engelbert built this league to Engelbert doesn't respect the players who make it work. Engelbert didn't stay quiet. "I did not make those comments," Engelbert said at her annual news conference ahead of Game 1 of the WNBA Finals. But here's the part that made everything worse. Collier then canceled a meeting she and Engelbert had tentatively planned for the following week. The relationship was gone. Engelbert's assertion that Collier's depiction of the private conversation was filled with inaccuracies pretty much pushed the relationship beyond repair, a source said. Now, it's worth noting, and this is important, we don't know exactly what was said in those private conversations. These are allegations. Engelbert denied them, but the damage was done. And what came next revealed that the fracture wasn't just between Engelbert and one star player. It ran much deeper than anyone imagined. Here's the angle that almost everyone covering this story missed entirely. It wasn't just the players who had issues with Engelbert. Multiple team owners told ESPN they are also unhappy with Engelbert's leadership. "If I had a vote," one owner said, "I would probably ask for a replacement." That's not Nafisa Collier talking. That's an owner. Someone who's supposed to be on Engelbert's side of the negotiating table. And it gets even more revealing. ESPN's Elle Duncan noted that the biggest issue is that while it's common for commissioners to be disliked by fans and players, those other commissioners, like Goodell, are liked by team owners. But there's nothing to suggest that WNBA team owners like Engelbert, which means they likely wouldn't have her back if faced with pressure from players to replace her. Think about what that means. In every other major sports league, the commissioner survives criticism from fans and players because the owners, the people who actually employ them, have their back. Goodell gets booed at every NFL draft. Manfred gets roasted by baseball fans constantly. But those guys aren't going anywhere because the owners are happy with the money rolling in. Engelbert doesn't appear to have that safety net. Frustration with Engelbert spans several areas, including issues brought to the commissioner being left unresolved and how she interacts and communicates with others. "I believe Nafisa's comments," one of the owners said. "Sometimes the approach of her message hasn't always been delivered well." Owners noted there can be a derogatory tone and that CBA negotiations might not have been as confrontational if there was a little bit better dialogue and relationship building. So we're not just talking about players wanting a friendlier commissioner. We're talking about the people who write the checks also questioning whether she's the right person for the next chapter. One industry insider summed it up. "She has done so much for the league commercially, people forget how bad it was when she got there. Her time will end." I just think Adam is broken up by it. That last line is telling. Adam Silver, Engelbert's boss, reportedly struggling with the situation because, by every measurable business metric, Engelbert delivered. But the human element, the relationships, the trust, the communication, that's where things fell apart. And that tension was about to collide with the most important negotiation in WNBA history. The CBA negotiations were nothing short of a battlefield. The verbal agreement came 17 months after the players opted out of the previous CBA in October 2024. 17 months of uncertainty, rumors of a potential lockout, players publicly questioning whether there would even be a 2026 season. The much-anticipated breakthrough capped an intense stretch of in-person negotiations in Midtown Manhattan, which spanned over 8 days and 100 hours. 100 hours of face-to-face bargaining. People sitting across tables at 3 in the morning, hammering out the details of a deal that would reshape women's professional sports forever. Revenue sharing was the biggest sticking point for months. The players' union's last known proposal called for about 26% of gross revenue, while the league offered players more than 70% of net revenue. The fundamental disagreement wasn't just about numbers. It was about philosophy. Gross versus net. Two completely different ways of calculating what the players deserve. And that philosophical divide kept both sides deadlocked for months. But in the final days, something shifted. Sources said the average revenue share would be nearly 20% across the length of the deal, not the 26% the players wanted, not the structure the league initially proposed, something in between. A compromise that neither side loved, but both could live with. The WNBA Board of Governors unanimously ratified the terms of the new CBA on Tuesday. Their vote came a day after the players also unanimously approved the 7-year CBA, which will begin this season and run through 2032, unanimous on both sides. After 17 months of fighting, both players and owners agreed that the deal was worth signing, and the celebration at the end was genuine. The marathon talks ended on a celebratory note, with hugs and a champagne toast in a conference room inside the Langham Hotel before 3 a.m. Caitlin Clark reportedly gave an emotional toast. Breanna Stewart called it transformational. Engelbert called the deal a fair win-win for all. For one brief moment, the war was over. The two sides that had been tearing each other apart for almost 2 years were clinking glasses together at 3 in the morning. But the scars from that battle don't just disappear with champagne. And the question everyone is now asking is whether Engelbert even wants to stick around for what comes next. Just 2 days after the CBA was ratified, Adam Silver stood in front of reporters at the NBA's Board of Governors meeting. And what he said, and more importantly, what he didn't say, told the entire story. "We haven't had those discussions yet with the WNBA board," Silver said. "I would only say Cathy has done a fantastic job since she's come to the WNBA. Obviously, you could see that in the results. Fantastic job. Great results. But zero commitment about her future. That's not how you talk about someone you plan to keep. I haven't had those discussions recently with Cathy, even in terms of her future plans and how long she wants to do this," he said. He hasn't even talked to her about it. The commissioner of the NBA hasn't spoken to the commissioner of the WNBA about whether she's continuing in the job after 6.5 years, after a transformational CBA, after building the league into a billion-dollar enterprise. The silence is deafening. The WNBA board is expected to discuss Cathy Engelbert's future as commissioner in the coming months, ahead of the expiration of her current contract in 2026. Her contract expires this year. The board hasn't discussed it yet. Silver hasn't discussed it with her. And Engelbert herself? When asked during the WNBA finals about her future, Engelbert said she has never been a quitter, and if there are problems with her leadership, she wants to fix them. But since she reports to both Adam Silver and the owners, that decision might not ultimately be up to her. That's the quiet part that nobody's saying out loud. Whether Engelbert walks away on her own terms or gets quietly pushed out, the outcome looks the same. The foundation is built. The CBA is signed for 7 years. The media deal runs for 11. Expansion is locked in. Everything she was hired to do is done. One team executive put it bluntly: change is a must. Either Cathy has to change how she relates to the players, or there has to be a change in that role. And that brings us to the biggest question nobody can really answer yet. If Engelbert leaves, what happens to the league she rebuilt from the ashes? Here's the reality nobody wants to face. Whoever replaces Cathy Engelbert inherits a league worth billions, a brand new CBA, a massive media deal, and a player base that just spent 2 years at war with the front office. They'll walk into a honeymoon period, 6 months, maybe a year, where the players give them a chance. But the first time the new commissioner has to make a hard business decision that the players disagree with, the same frustrations will come roaring back. Because the fundamental tension doesn't disappear with a new face at the top. The players want a friend. The league needs a CEO. Those two things have never been compatible, and a name change on the door won't fix that. Engelbert came in when the league was drowning, restructured the entire business, delivered the biggest media deal and CBA in WNBA history, expanded the league to 18 teams, and walked out to booze. She checked every box. She delivered transformational growth. And the reward for all of it was being called the worst leader in the world by people whose salaries she just increased by 400%. She looked out the window, saw everyone else having fun, finished her chores, and walked out the door. Can you blame her? Stay locked in with my channel Simply Explained, your home for the truth behind the WNBA headlines.